Back. My name is Chris Sessionelli. I get to build, buy, and sell some prop businesses every single day. And today we're going to be doing another exit ready deal review where my team over at simplebroker.ai reviews thousands of deals every single week so that you don't have to. And then we surface the best ones to the top through our deal reviews. In today's deal review, we're going to be talking about a event services business. It's actually a photo booth rental company, and it's a provider of equipment for different types of event services, whether it's corporate events, birthday parties, weddings, special occasions. They set up the booths and they make sure that you have all the props and the materials that you need to be able to have a good time and make good memories. This business was established back in 2015, and it's doing $300,000 a year in revenue, which is nothing to sniff at, because a lot of the time these businesses, if it's not going to be a solopreneur, like an owner operator, some of these businesses can be, placed with an operator and be fairly passive. So there's actually opportunity here for legs of a passive investment, a passive asset. It currently has 75,000 in EBITDA with 3 full-time employees and 7 part-time employees. So it sounds like maybe this is actually a company that is currently staffed out and operating somewhat passively. Inventory wise, it's 12 photo booths, and they have different themes and different types of materials to be able to make those pictures fun. So a good bit of inventory. My question becomes, what is that? So like, what is the actual make, model? How old is that inventory? Is it 10 years old? Bought when the business was first bought? Is that stuff breaking down? Are we going to have to replace that? So those are the thoughts that I have. And then if we wanted to ramp up and maybe scale to more, to maybe grow our revenue, if we can support it in the market, what's the cost of new equipment? So I have a lot of questions around the inventory here. That's a big part of what you're ultimately purchasing, associated with also the existing customer base. That's mostly what this business is. And then I guess a little bit of the process to be able to go out and do this stuff from a teach, train, equip perspective of the team. From the services offered, it's what we talked about already. It's photo booth rentals, event photography, and the things that go with that. Client base is actually pretty great. So they have 150 events right now per year, which means that they're doing over 10 a month, which that's not too bad. I mean, that's a couple a week consistently. And it says they have repeat corporate clients. Now, what looks good with the corporate clients is also going to negatively affect them when it comes time for us to dive a little bit deeper into this deal, because what we're going to pull back and uncover is that a handful of those clients make up a pretty decent sized chunk of the concentration of revenue. From growth opportunities, kind of touched on this a little bit. We could get into expansion of new markets. However, as soon as you're doing expansion of new markets with this type of business, you're pretty much setting up a new business. You need the footprint of new employees and new relationships and everything that goes with that, storing, the equipment, all that stuff. So I'd focus more on existing market and how we're going to maximize what we have already, do it a little bit better, maybe do something new to increase some marketing efforts, generate new revenue, and introduce new revenue streams. The owner is selling because they are looking to retire and they want continuity to the business. So this is a great opportunity to be able to come in and align with an owner who's planning for legacy, right? They're making it clear that they want somebody to come in and take over and grow. And, they just spent the past 10 years or so building this thing up, and they're looking to retire. I mean, it's in Florida, so I'd have to assume that they're going to retire in Florida. They'll probably stay local, maybe. So, who knows? You may get access to some good training and support. Right now, it's saying that they'll support a transition period of 3 months. I would probably focus on that as a potential place of conversation. In terms of asking price from a financial perspective, $650,000 right off the bat, to me, that feels very kind of high. So we'll go into an analysis by normalizing our seller's discretionary earnings in a second, and we'll find out where it benchmarks against the competition. But again, they're doing $300,000 in gross revenue. And, when we went into the customer concentration, even though it's 150 events, a significant amount of that is from a handful of corporate contracts. So if you lose those, there's high risk to that revenue. So you really can't support the asking price, knowing what the risk is. From a cash flow perspective, 75,000, right? Their inventory value is 60,000. So that tells you what the value of these photo booths are. Don't do public math, but you divide that out. It tells you what they're worth, gives you a little bit of insight to the answers to the questions from earlier. Furnitures, fixtures, and equipment, 25,000, because they do have a lease. Apparently, it's with 2-year renewables. You have to store this stuff somewhere. So this is one of those ones where you're kind of going to have that physical office space, unless you're doing like a van type of setup. But then in that situation, you're leasing out the vans, and it's another line item. Let's get into normalizing the SDE, seller's discretionary earnings. When we're doing this, what we're doing is we're adding back in, right, the things that aren't showing up on that P&L EBITDA that realistically, when you take over the business, they would be there. So we want to know what it is. That includes the owner's salary, the owner's perks, non-recurring expenses that showed up that we want to add back in. Oftentimes when businesses are getting ready to sell, you'll see those. So owner salary, 40,000. It feels kind of low, to be honest, which makes me feel like maybe this is a passive ownership business. I doubt that they're going and showing up at all these events and doing all the work and taking home 40K, especially with the headcount that they have. Owner's perks, 5,000 is probably like benefits, something of that nature. 10,000 non-recurring, that's maybe like legal CPA fees or whatever it is, getting ready for the sale. So we add all of that stuff back in, and we end up with an SDE of 130,000. So if you were to purchase this business tomorrow, what this is saying, if everything stayed the same, which in this business it feels like there's maybe risk that it won't, especially if those corporate relationships are closed off of relationships with the existing owner, etc., or any other variable for change. If nothing changed, you'd end up with $130,000 that you as the new owner have to play with, profit in your pocket, to be able to make good, timely decisions of where it's going to be allocated. That being said, now that we know the SDE, what we can figure out is the SDE multiple. And the SDE multiple is their asking price divided by the SDE. And that's going to give us a multiple of 5. So this is currently trading 5 times seller's discretionary earnings. Right off the bat, I could give you a red flag there. This is now a benchmark. So what we want to do is benchmark the SDE multiples against other businesses within the same industry based off of tiers, right? So we're going to go from annual SDE tiers, and then we're going to see what the typical SDE multiple is. So that way we can benchmark what this deal's trading at versus comparisons. And then we'll see, is it priced good, high, low, accurate, what? It gives us a basis to be able to start our analysis for what we'd be looking at in terms of a negotiation if we want to continue to do this deal. Right away, the bat, we know that it's a 5. So I have the 5 highlighted on the right side, which is typically a tier 4 upper mid-market, which again, these are broken down by our micro equity market, not the market as a whole. So this is within our data set, which are smaller businesses in general. And this is our proprietary data set over at simplebroker.ai, where we're pulling in and aggregating deals from everywhere, all over the place within our micro equity market. And we're collecting this stuff and analyzing this stuff. This is showing a pretty high side multiple, right? 5 could even be an argument for a tier 5 for something that's 400,000 or more in SDE. The reality is this deal is 130,000. So we got it at a tier 3, which should be closer to 3 or maybe 4.5 on the high side, 4 times in the middle, split the baby. So we know that this deal is not priced right. And it's either not priced right because they're just trying to price high to open up conversation to try to figure out where they're going to go in terms of the wiggle room, or it's not priced right because they don't really know in terms of the seller listing this and putting this out there as a deal. So we'll have to see. The reality is, though, we want to make sure that this is a deal worth doing before we go and try to find out about price, right? And figure out more information in terms of how we could position and negotiate around this deal. What I like about this deal is that because of the nature of the business, this could be a fairly passive asset. It's not like the type of business that you want to own, across the country. You want to geographically be pretty close, right? And you got to be able to move the right levers to influence the deal if things go wrong once you take ownership. But it's a decent business if you're looking for some sort of return on cash, right? And a place to stash the cash, right? You want to make an acquisition, or maybe even if we go into the conversation negotiation, maybe we could structure the terms of the acquisition, favorably to be able to take it over as a passive asset. From an overview perspective, to see if we could kill this deal on the vine, right? Because you want to kill it on the vine fast. That's the name of the game. Let's kill it on the vine fast to determine whether or not it's something that we should continue to do. From a financial performance perspective, it's pretty decent from stabilization of revenue, but I do think that there's some risk into this next, which is client contracts, and there's a high concentration of these corporate accounts. So even though the revenue has been pretty stable for a long period of time, because of where the revenue is coming from, right? Even though it's over 150 events, notice they said 150 events and not customers, right? There's a pretty concentrated group of corporate clients that's providing the majority of that. And it doesn't seem like they have that same level of distribution into these other events like your weddings and your birthdays and things like that diversifies the overall customer base. So it makes me think like, okay, there's going to need to be a lot of investment that goes into marketing to be able to build up market opportunity. That being said, if you can defend against losing these key relationships and still execute into diversification of the revenue base, there's a business to be built, and there's a business case that could be built around growth here as a growth opportunity. However, it definitely doesn't support the existing price, so you'd have to negotiate the price. In terms of dependency, in terms of operational efficiency, these businesses are pretty simple, right? But if you're running this thing, again, passively, which we have to find out fully in diligence, but it seems like that's the case, again, based off the data we have of what that SDE, what the owner's comp is, etc. It seems like it's something that's just coming out, really reinvesting in the team to run this thing. In that situation, usually the processes, like the operational things, the blocking and tackling stuff, pretty baked out. So you're kind of buying yourself a playbook here. And as long as you can keep running that playbook with people, keep teach, train, equip the process that works, and keep the inventory there and keep booking clients, then you can stay in business, right? So it's a business that has some level of operational efficiency. Management team, again, we don't 100% know what the owner's involvement will be, once they transition out. But as of right now, it seems like they're pretty involved from at least like an overarching operational management perspective of making sure the relationships of client customers, like the money's coming through and flowing through. If we could figure out if there's somebody who's in the business that could be tapped to step up as an operating partner and take that overall responsibility on, and then we could figure out a transitionary plan with the existing owner to do that, then that's a deal that could potentially get done and structured, and you're coming in almost as a financing partner to that operating partner who's already in seat. Industry trends, it is what it is. It's an event-based business. As long as we continue to have events, which we all experienced what happened during COVID, so nothing's ever guaranteed. But as long as that's the case, as long as people want pictures of experiences, which tends to be, seems to be an uptrend with social, then this is something that's going to be in demand unless something else a better mousetrap comes up, maybe holograms or something. I don't know. Right. But decent. Valuation wise, I gave it a 6 because I feel like the owner here is maybe open to negotiations, but from where it's priced at, we know it's very priced. It's priced high. So this could have maybe even been a 4 or 5 on this scorecard. But this gets us to a 70, 71, 72 score. And it's a good enough deal to look at. Some of these numbers could have been higher if it wasn't for some of the question marks associated with that customer base. So revenue, financial performance could have been higher. Client contracts could have been higher. It depends upon what the actual influence of the owner's relationship is and what those actual contractual relationships with those customers are. If we can make sure we mitigate or ring fence the risks there, then those numbers would be higher. And if that's the case, and there's some operational efficiency and the team is in place, and we know that this is actually passively run, right? So if you clear up some of those question marks, those numbers that are 7s or 6s, they could be 8s or 9s. And in that situation, it's definitely a deal worth exploring. So for those reasons, and because it has the added attribute of being a potential passive asset, as well as something that the owner is saying that they're willing to discuss terms with, it's definitely something interesting enough to navigate forward into a negotiation. So from a strategy perspective, first and foremost, you definitely got to focus in on price, because there's an opportunity for leverage here. We did the math, we did the work, we benchmarked, and it's priced high. So if you come forward with the data and you lead with the data, there's an argument that could be made for price reduction, or perhaps even better for you, tying it into the deal structure itself. And in the deal structure itself, we could leverage earnouts, seller financing, perhaps deferred payments on the backside, and we could align everything into ring fencing around that risk of the customer concentration risk, reduction of revenue, right? All of the risk components that we've identified previously associated with this deal could get tied into the deal structuring, which if the risk is incurred, then the natural costs would go down, right? Based off of how you structure the deal. If it's not, then you still want to have a conversation around price. But price, you could pay for, price is really just a number. It's really the terms that matter the most, right? So this is an opportunity to have strong, leg to stand on, to be able to come in and negotiate a structure of the deal that actually makes sense within a fair price, right? That being said, you want to lock in. If you can do that, if you can accomplish that, if you can, get the skin in the game of the owner, which is an aged out owner who wants legacy, right? So they're looking for somebody who's going to come in and take over this business, probably continue to treat the employees great and the customers, perhaps even better, right? Keep the brand and all the relationships alive, serve the community. In that situation, that's a motivated potential owner who will definitely support the transition for sure. But if you can tie it into the deal structure and they get skin in the game, that becomes a really strong ally, right? Advocate into the deal. And it allows you to position into growth and improvement, which allows you to put together a strategic plan to potentially identify new areas to be able to optimize and grow the revenue, ring fence the risk of the revenue that already exists, and then perhaps get a deal done that's worth doing. All right, this was this week's deal review. If you want to check out and learn a little bit more or find deals like this, check out simplebroker.ai. Until next time, trust the process, commit to the journey.